How's it going, everyone? And welcome to another Volume by Volume. I'm TMG Penty, and as you saw in the thumbnail and in the title, today we are talking about I'm Standing on a Million Lives. This is a manga that caught my attention through its cover. I thought this cover looked really sick and really interesting. I will say I'm a little sad about how the second cover turned out, but I'll discuss that more in the video about that one. But then it lost me. It lost me with its back. It talked about him being transported with his two most beautiful classmates, but also talking about how he's a farmer and how is he going to escape. And it didn't connect. It's hard for isekais because, like, when isekai wasn't a genre and Sword Art came out, it's a cool premise, but since it's a genre, it doesn't grasp me as much. You know, I enjoy shonen. I'm a shonen bro, I guess. I enjoy a lot of shonen manga, but this one lost me. But since I did think constantly about this manga, I said, you know what? I made a whole thing about reading manga and saying my opinion on it and saying my piece. So I went ahead and picked it up, and that's what I've read recently. So, like I said before in this, the first part will be pretty much only the first chapter, and I'll go a bit in depth. I'm not going to cover everything in it, but it'll be that way you can get an idea of the manga, and if you want to go pick it up and read it, you can. And then after that, I'll let you know, and it'll be more spoilery where I open up to what the whole volume is about and my thoughts on the entirety of it. So, if I focused on anything, you have three main characters in this first manga or first volume. There is a fourth, but that's later along the line, so I'll talk about that later. So you have Yotsuya, which is the main protagonist. He's a male who just doesn't care about school. He doesn't care about life. He's not studying for I think it's either his college or his high school exams. He's not paying attention to it. And he gets transported into another world. So he starts out in his classroom with two of his most beautiful classmates. They don't really describe it like that in the manga, so I don't know why the back chose to, but one is Shindo and one is Hakozaki. Suddenly he appears and he's in this new world. It's this old-timey European world. And in that world, he sees Hakozaki and Shindo, who are classes of, like, characters, I guess. Hakozaki being a fighter and Shindo being a mage. He gets greeted by essentially a game master who is just this naked, headless dude. And he tells them, hey, you have to complete this goal. And once you complete the goal, you can get out of here and help save the world, essentially. And eventually you'll have 10 teammates to help you complete the goals, and they get harder as time goes on. So that's the setup for the manga, is that they're going to have to complete these 10 goals to try and save the world. He has no idea what's going on. They let him know that they get to sometimes essentially choose who's going to be in the thing next. He rolls the will, and he gets granted the class of farmer, where as soon as he got that, I was like, oh, okay, I think I might see what's happening here. And so it picks up. They learn that the rules set in this world is that as long as one of them survives, they will revive eventually, and that if they complete the goal, they get out of the world. Now, from here, it doesn't get too haremy. It does sort of treat it nice that he just interacts with the girls. I'm glad that there wasn't a lot of that in the first chapter. It doesn't focus on how beautiful they are. He is into one of the girls and they joke on it, which is fine. That's a manga staple. But overall, I was interested what happens in this first chapter. Essentially, the goal of this chapter was for them to slay a goblin, which kills them a bunch. What you learn is Hakozaki is a very weak and timid person. She's the timid girl. But yet she's been given the fighter class, so she can't do anything. Shindo is very, very aggressive, the tsundere type character archetype, who is a mage, though, so she can get batted away so easily. She's a glass cannon, essentially. And so what happens is Yotsuya sets out on grinding, essentially, because he doesn't want to be a farmer forever. He's tired because they can only use the weapons they've been granted to them. His ability is knowing what's edible. It's pretty useless at the time. His weapons aren't good for fighting, so he goes out swacking and swinging a stick to level up, and boom, he levels up, and he becomes a chef. And that's when I guessed it. The whole gist here is how he's going to become the most powerful character, as I thought, is by going through and grinding and getting all the worst classes till he becomes so busted nothing can defeat him. So I was a little turned off by that. But overall, they go through, they interact with villagers within the world. They're spending a couple days here. They die a lot, to be honest, and they die in different ways. But what I find interesting at a point is you realize that if you get eaten, you don't respawn. So he's fighting the ogre, and first Shindo gets eaten, the mage girl, then Hakozaki trying to protect a village. And it's just him. But luckily, with the chef, he gains essentially a power to see their weak points. It cuts him open. He's able to revive his teammates. They defeat the ogre, and they get teleported out of the world. And that's sort of the gist of what happens in the first chapter. You're learning a bit about the characters. You learn more about how Yotsuya doesn't care. But there's a little hint that maybe there's something he had happen where he recognizes how strong people are, and that matters to him. It's not fully explained, not even in the entire volume, I'll go ahead and say. So there's some idea there. He cares about getting out, but he doesn't really care about much else. So from there, my thoughts were, it feels a little generic, to be honest. It's not grabbing me a ton. The main thing I thought was interesting is they teleport out of the world. I think a lot of isekais just use the isekai setup so that their character is clueless in their world, so they can explain to you, the reader, what's happening instead of just having a world and explaining it to you. So it's interesting to have them interact with the real world and then interact with the isekai world. And then there's only a couple characters in the isekai world, so you don't really have to take care of who's in the isekai. It's more about getting out and them figuring out how to fix their issues. But overall, my thoughts on it was it's okay. It's not fantastic. If you wanted to hear more about why I'm going to probably pick up the second volume, that's going to be in the second part, where I'm going to talk more about what happens after this first chapter. I think there's 4 or 5 chapters in total in this volume. But if you don't want to spoil anything past that, even though I haven't been selling it fantastically, if the idea of this manga of someone being teleported in and out of an isekai interests you, then I'd probably stop here. And so with that said, we get into the second, third, and fourth chapters. The second chapter pretty much takes place in the outside world, where the game master shows up. He's texting and calling the main character. He's like, hey, you gotta go help out this other girl, where he busts into a bathroom, finds a girl being bullied, has to help her from her bullies, does some pretty crazy things for a person, smashing a bunch of random people's phone, and stuff like that. It's actually a little sad. Like, the bullying scene was drawn pretty well to where I actually did sort of feel bad for the girl getting bullied by her friends. And he just does it because the game master tells him to, and he's not understanding why the game master is interfering in the real world and messing with him. And that's pretty much what happens. They get ported back into the world. They are suddenly there with the girl he saved. I'll talk more about her in the second volume. But they get in there. She is given the role of a different kind of mage. And finally, he levels up. He gains a new mage class. Some other major things that happen in there is their new goal is they have to travel between these points within a certain amount of time, and the time is pretty much exact for them to travel it. They have to get there. They have, I think it's a week. They have to take that week to get to that new point, and it's pretty on the nose that it's going to take that long. So they are trying to scheme up all these ways to get there, get horses. In the end, 3 of them get captured. They learn that they can't attack the humans in the world. They will actually de-level if they fight the humans and kill them and harm them. So they have to find unique ways around that. You learn at this point about Yotsuya, which is what the creator tried to make unique about him, that he just doesn't care about anyone else. He just cares about completing the goal. So when they get captured, he's like, fuck them. If I complete the goal, they get ported out, so who cares? Plus, if they die, they just respawn anyways. So he comes off a little cold, which is not something you would expect from one of these isekai protagonists. And overall, from there, you're getting a sense that it's setting up a group. The one thing I noticed is he gets ported in with another female. And at this point, when they have 10 teammates and they're already at 4, my thoughts were, at most 2 others will be males and the rest will be females. That is my thoughts so far. I have no idea if that's true, But unfortunately, the genre is doing this manga a disservice because I feel like it's going to lean into that harem eventually. Matter of fact, at a point, you get introduced to this new female fighter, which is nice, though, because she's a very tough character, a very strong female character, which is cool, but it's another female. And it's the fault of isekai that it's great that they want to introduce so many female characters, but they introduce a ton, and they all have to be interested in the main dude. And that's pretty much it. There is some good moments. You get to see that they do a good job diving into some of the other characters, luckily, in my opinion. You learn about Shindo, essentially, that she's made a bunch of friends in real life. You understand why Hakozaki is so frail. Is in real life, I think she actually has a disease that makes her weaker. So it's so foreign to her to be a fighter and actually have the strength to wield her weapon. That's why she sucks. She's one of the best classes in the game, but she sucks because she's too scared to do anything. And Shindo, you learn a lot about her real life and what she's doing within the real life. She's essentially, if I'm correct, either a model or an idol, and how she was gathering friends to do stuff, and that's been ripped from her in this world. She doesn't know anyone. She doesn't have connection or friends to strengthen herself, and they play on that, which is interesting. And the manga ends with eventually them with the new girl that they've met from the isekai world setting off with horses. And that's it. And at the point of when I finished this, I thought, for this series, I don't think I want to read more because I wasn't sold. There was nothing that grabbed me. I didn't really care about reaching the goals. It'd be cool to see the other teammates, but I feel like I know where that's going. And what got me was there was an afterword. The author made a really long paged afterword about his thoughts on manga and how much of manga is just a fictional world that they made so that it can be great throughout time, and how much of it is using things from the real world to connect with younger Japanese people, and how he wanted to make his more focused on, if I'm correct, connecting to real world events and making it an in-the-moment manga where you enjoy it because it's relating to real-world events. I think he references earthquakes in the manga, which would reference a certain earthquake for younger people. And I think even the artist writes about his thoughts on the manga, and I said, you know what? You got me here. You wanted to try and make a unique protagonist. I think he's still a little generic, but you caught my attention. So I did already go ahead and pick up the second volume. I'll give it a read. If you can't grab me within 2 volumes, you've lost me. I mean, if you can't grab me in 1, it's even worse. But he did enough to talk about his passion for his manga that he's writing that I'm interested enough. But other than that, it's a pickup. If you like isekais, I'm sure you can get some enjoyment out of it, especially with the cooler original idea of porting in and out of the isekai world. And it has a nice plot going for it. I hope it just goes through the 10 people in the saving the world arc and it ends. That's my thoughts. Make it nice, short, and sweet, in my opinion, but we'll see what he does and what he chooses to do. But other than that, have a good one. Tell me what you think. If you're reading I'm Standing on a Million Lives. Another thing that got me interested in reading it more is I have a friend who I think either read or watched it, and he personally said that it leans away from the tropiness and actually goes a little darker, so he didn't like it as much. So that caught my interest also. So tell me what you thought of I'm Standing on a Million Lives. Show me what you're reading. I have a stack, where my hand is touching the top of the stack to get through. On my TikTok, I upload shorter versions of my thoughts on manga. And the next one we should be talking about is Days on Fez, which is me stepping out of my comfort zone of reading shonen and doing more of a slice of life about people at concerts. So if you like the video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. I'm going to try and do more of these as best I can. But other than that, have a good one, y'all. I'm TNG Penty. Have a great day.